Since when do we let black people in through the front door? The woman's voice silenced the entire room. Victoria Hartwell, the millionaire's wife, diamonds on her neck, disgust in her eyes. A black man in a simple navy suit stood by the window. No Rolex, no designer label, nothing to show who he really was. Answer me. Are you the help? The valet? She stepped closer. You people always sneak in where you do not belong. I am a guest, ma'am. A black guest? In my husband's club? She laughed coldly and snapped her fingers at security. Remove him, before he steals something. The black man did not argue, did not fight back. He simply said, Ma'am, I think there has been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is you thinking you belong here. She grabbed a glass of $800 wine and threw it directly in his face. What happened next cost her $2.4 billion in front of everyone. 12 hours earlier, Brandon Taylor woke up in his modest townhouse in Alexandria, Virginia. The morning light filtered through simple curtains. No mansion, no penthouse. Just a 3-bedroom townhouse that he had owned for 15 years. Most people would never guess he was worth $400 million. He drove a 2019 Honda Accord. He wore suits without designer labels. He made his own pour-over coffee every morning instead of having an assistant fetch Starbucks. On his living room wall hung a framed photograph of his mother, Dorothy Taylor, a nurse who worked double shifts at Baltimore General Hospital for 32 years. She died in 2008, worn out from a lifetime of caring for others. She never knew how successful her son would become. Brandon touched the frame gently every morning, a small ritual, a reminder of where he came from. Next to that photograph was a smaller one. Brandon, at 28 years old, standing outside Goldman Sachs headquarters in Manhattan. Brand new suit, biggest smile of his life. The day he thought all his dreams had come true. He tried not to look at that picture too often. It reminded him of what happened the following year, the worst moment of his life, the one time he lost control and let anger win. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from Darnell Brooks, his chief of staff. Chef at Whitmore Club called, says there's been some activity regarding the Hartwells. Wants to speak before tonight. Sounds nervous. Brandon frowned. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. The signing dinner for the $2.4 billion acquisition of Hartwell Industries' semiconductor division. 18 months of intense negotiation. 12,000 jobs hanging in the balance. He texted back, set up the call, and Darnell, make sure we have backup recording devices tonight, just in case. At 9 o'clock, Brandon arrived at Meridian Capital headquarters in Tyson's Corner. The building was a sleek glass tower, but inside, the atmosphere was deliberately unpretentious. No executive parking spaces, no corner offices. Brandon believed that hierarchy bred arrogance. In the main conference room, his general counsel, Sandra Williams, was already preparing the presentation. Hartwell Industries, Sandra began, clicking through slides. 4 generations of old Virginia money. The semiconductor division has been bleeding cash, $200 million in losses last fiscal year. They are desperate, Brandon. Preston Hartwell has been calling our office daily for 2 weeks. Tell me about tonight's venue. Sandra hesitated. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. The Whitmore Club. Preston insisted on hosting there. Said it was tradition. I sense a problem. Sandra pulled up a new folder. The Whitmore Club did not admit black members until 2019. Even now. She turned the laptop toward him. I found 19 documented complaints of racial discrimination in just the past 3 years, staff harassment, so-called random ID verification checks. One incident where a black cardiac surgeon, a 15-year member, was asked to use the service entrance. Brandon's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Is there a pattern? A common thread? One name appears repeatedly. Victoria Hartwell, Preston's wife. She chairs the membership committee and has for a decade. Sandra paused, her expression darkening. But there is something else. Something from 2014 that never made it into any official complaint. She pulled up an old newspaper clipping from a local Virginia paper. The headline read, "Teen busboy dies in apparent suicide days after country club incident." Dion Mitchell, Sandra said quietly. 19 years old. Worked as a busboy at Whitmore Club. According to this article, someone publicly accused him of stealing at a charity event in front of 200 guests. 3 days later, he jumped off the Wilson Bridge. Brandon stared at the photograph accompanying the article. A young black man with a bright smile, wearing his busboy uniform, full of hope. Who accused him? The article does not say. The club refused all comment. The Mitchell family could not afford legal representation. The whole thing was buried within a week. Brandon studied the young face in the photograph for a long moment. Find out everything you can about what happened to Dion Mitchell. That afternoon, Brandon received a phone call that raised more questions than it answered. Chef Raymond Watts had worked at Whitmore Club for 30 years. His voice on the phone was low and cautious, like a man afraid of being overheard. "Mr. Taylor, I appreciate you taking my call. I know you are a busy man. Darnell said you had concerns about tonight." "Concerns?" Raymond let out a humorless laugh. "That is one word for it. I have worked in that kitchen for 3 decades. I have seen things that never make it into any report." "Such as?" "Mrs. Hartwell, Victoria, she has a pattern, Mr. Taylor. When she decides someone does not belong at her club, she finds ways to remove them. Sometimes it is a complaint about service. Sometimes it is an accusation of theft. Sometimes it is just making someone so uncomfortable they never come back." Brandon listened carefully. "You think she might cause problems tonight?" "I think if she sees a black man at her husband's signing dinner, a black man she does not recognize, there will be trouble. And I think nobody in that room will lift a finger to stop her." "I appreciate the warning, Raymond. Is there anything else?" A long pause. When Raymond spoke again, his voice was even lower. "The security cameras in the Monroe room have a habit of malfunctioning when it is convenient for certain people. If something happens tonight, there may be no official record. Then we will bring our own cameras." "That is wise." Another pause. "Mr. Taylor, there are some truths that take a long time to surface. Some people who keep records of their own. I have a good memory. I remember names, all of them, and I remember for a very long time." The call ended, leaving Brandon with an uneasy feeling. What did Raymond know that he was not willing to say directly? At 7:15 that evening, Brandon arrived at Whitmore Club alone. The building was everything he expected. White columns reaching toward the sky, crystal chandeliers visible through tall windows, valets in crisp uniforms parking a parade of luxury vehicles, Bentleys, Maseratis, a Ferrari. Brandon stepped out of his Honda Accord. The young valet did not even glance at his face. His eyes went to the car, then dismissed both vehicle and driver in one motion. "Service entrance is around back. I am here for the Hartwell dinner." Now the valet looked at him. Confusion first, then suspicion. "Name?" "Taylor." The valet checked his list once, twice. His expression shifted through several phases. Confusion, doubt, recognition, embarrassment. "Oh, Mr. Taylor, right this way, sir. I apologize for the confusion." 4.5 seconds. That was how long it took for the valet to recognize his error. Brandon had been counting these moments his entire adult life. The hesitation, the second look, the recalibration. It used to make him angry. Now he just kept count. Inside the Monroe room, 20 guests mingled with champagne glasses. A string quartet played softly. The room was an ocean of white faces in designer clothes. Brandon spotted Sandra near the door, holding the leather folder containing the contract. In the corner, A young woman with brown hair stood apart from the crowd. She looked uncomfortable, out of place. Something about her face seemed familiar, but Brandon could not place it. He did not know yet that she was Emma Hartwell, Victoria's daughter, and she had been waiting for a moment like this for 2 years. Brandon stood by the window checking his phone. A text from Sandra. "Contract ready, Preston confirmed for 7:45. He did not notice Victoria Hartwell approaching until her perfume reached him. Expensive. Overpowering. "Excuse me." He turned. A woman in her mid-40s, blonde hair lacquered into place, diamonds at her throat, her ears, her wrists. Her eyes moved over him like he was furniture she was considering discarding. "Are you with the catering company?" "No, ma'am." "The wine service, then. We requested the reserve list 20 minutes ago. You people are always so slow." "I am not with the wine service either." Her eyes narrowed. "Then what exactly are you doing in here?" "This is a private event. Members and their guests only." "I am a guest." Victoria Hartwell laughed. The sound was cold and sharp. "A guest? In that suit? With no member escort?" She looked him up and down with undisguised contempt. "I have protected the standards of this club for 15 years. I know exactly who belongs here. And I know exactly who does not." "I was invited by your husband, ma'am." "My husband does not associate with—" She stopped herself, but the unfinished sentence hung between them like poison in the air. She snapped her fingers. 2 security guards materialized instantly. "This man is trespassing. Remove him, quietly." Brandon remained calm. His voice stayed level. "Perhaps you should speak with Preston before—" "Do not tell me what to do." Victoria's face flushed. "I am telling you for the last time. You do not belong here. You will never belong here." At that moment, Darnell Brooks entered through a side door. He saw the confrontation. His hand moved to his phone. He began recording. In the corner, Emma Hartwell also raised her phone. The double doors at the end of the room burst open. Preston Hartwell rushed in. His face was flushed. His eyes were wild. And when he saw his wife standing over Brandon Taylor, all the color drained from his cheeks. "Victoria, what are you doing?" "Preston, thank God. I caught this man trying to sneak into our event. Security is handling it." "Victoria, stop!" Preston's voice cracked. "That man is Brandon Taylor." "Who?" "Brandon Taylor, Meridian Capital Partners, the $2.4 billion acquisition." Preston's hands were visibly shaking. "He is the buyer, Victoria. He is saving our company. He is saving us." The silence that followed was absolute. 20 people stopped breathing. Victoria blinked. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She did not apologize. Well, he should have announced himself properly. Walking in here dressed like that, like a servant. What was I supposed to think? Brandon's voice remained steady. "You were supposed to think I was a guest, Mrs. Hartwell, like everyone else in this room." "Do not lecture me." Victoria's chin lifted. "Someone has to maintain standards. Someone has to make sure the wrong people do not slip through the cracks." "Victoria, please." Preston reached for her arm. She shook him off violently. "No, I will not be lectured by—" She stopped again, but everyone heard what she did not say. Brandon met her eyes. "By what, Mrs. Hartwell?" "Do not twist my words." "I am not twisting anything. You have been perfectly clear." "You arrogant—" She seized the nearest wine glass, a full pour of Chateau Margaux, $800 a bottle, and she threw it directly in his face. The wine hit him like a slap, red liquid cascading down his forehead, down his cheeks, soaking into the white collar of his shirt, the smell of oak and berries filling the air. Brandon did not move, did not wipe his face, did not flinch. 14 people in that room. Not one moved to help him. Victoria smiled, triumphant. "Now get out, before I call the real authorities." Brandon stood motionless. wine dripping from his chin onto white marble. 20 years earlier, in a Goldman Sachs conference room, a man named Derek Whitfield had called him something far worse, and Brandon had lost control. One punch. It cost him everything. Not tonight. Not again. Slowly, deliberately, he wiped the wine from his eyes. Sandra. The contract. Sandra stepped forward. Her hands trembled as she handed him the leather folder. Brandon opened it. 52 pages. The acquisition agreement. He held it up for everyone to see. This is the contract for Meridian Capital to acquire Hartwell Industries' semiconductor division. $2.4 billion. 12,000 jobs. 4 generations of your family's legacy. He looked directly at Victoria. I came here to save your family. To save your name. To save everything your ancestors built. He gripped the contract with both hands and tore it in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed through the silent room. He tore it again. And again. And again. Until 52 pages became confetti. White paper fluttering down to mix with red wine on the marble floor. Preston collapsed to his knees. He scrambled to gather the pieces like a drowning man reaching for driftwood. No, 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 no. Brandon, please. Brandon stepped over the scattered paper and walked toward the door. That contract could have saved 12,000 jobs, Mrs. Hartwell, but you made your choice. You chose that glass of wine over everything. He walked out without looking back. In the hallway, Darnell caught up with Brandon. I recorded everything. 14 minutes, from the moment she asked if you were the help. Sandra was already on her phone. Uploading to cloud backup now. Email copies going out in 30 seconds. Brandon kept walking toward the exit. Wait until we are completely outside the building. If they have signal jammers... The hallway lights flickered. Darnell looked at his phone. His face went pale. No, 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 no. What is it? The files. All 3 video files. They are corrupted. Upload failed. Sandra grabbed the phone. That is impossible. These files do not just corrupt themselves. Someone accessed my device remotely. They wiped everything. Brandon stopped walking. Through an open doorway, he glimpsed a figure in white moving quickly down a service corridor. Chef Raymond Watts, head down, walking fast. Back in the Monroe room, the guests had scattered like roaches in light. Only Preston and Victoria remained among the ruins of the contract. Preston sat in a chair, staring at nothing. Pieces of paper still littered the floor around him. Do you understand what you have done? His voice was hollow, empty. That was our only lifeline. The only investor willing to buy our failing division. We are $200 million in debt. Without that deal, we are bankrupt in 18 months. You will find another buyer. There is no other buyer! Preston slammed his palm against the table. Why do you think I spent 18 months begging Brandon Taylor? He was the only one willing to take on our mess. Victoria turned away. He should have identified himself properly. Anyone would have made the same mistake. Mistake? Preston laughed bitterly. You threw wine in his face. You called him a criminal. You said... He could not bring himself to repeat her words. His phone buzzed. Then again. Then a third time. 3 text messages from 3 of tonight's guests. Charles Whitney, withdrawing his $50 million investment in their Miami development project. Margaret Holloway, canceling the Q3 partnership effective immediately. Stephen Crawford, requesting time to reconsider our business relationship going forward. Preston showed Victoria the messages. They are running. Everyone who witnessed what you did tonight is distancing themselves as fast as they can because no one wants to be associated with the woman who destroyed a $2.4 billion deal over a glass of wine. For the first time, fear flickered across Victoria's face. They cannot simply... They can. And they already have. By morning, everyone in Virginia will know what happened in this room. But Victoria did not know the worst part yet. There was no video evidence. Security cameras had malfunctioned. Darnell's phone was wiped. The 14 guests would never speak publicly. In their world, you did not expose each other's scandals. Without video, it would be her word against Brandon's. And Victoria Hartwell had spent 15 years cultivating relationships, serving on charity boards, hosting fundraisers. Brandon Taylor was just a black man making accusations without proof. Or so she thought. That night, Brandon received a message from an unknown number. "Mr. Taylor, I have video. I sent it out before the system could block it. We need to talk. E.H." And then another message from a different number. "I know what you are thinking about me. You are right, but also wrong. I have more than video. I have 10 years of secrets. Meet me at 6 a.m. The walk-in cooler behind the kitchen. R." One more line followed. P.S. Ask Victoria Hartwell about Dion Mitchell. By morning, the story had spread across Virginia. But without video evidence, the narrative was murky. News anchors chose their words carefully. Rumors of an altercation at the exclusive Whitmore Club are circulating on social media. A prominent black businessman alleges he was mistreated by the wife of the Hartwell family. However, no video evidence has emerged to corroborate these claims. Victoria held her own press conference at 10 o'clock. She sat in her tastefully decorated living room, wearing a soft pink blazer and her grandmother's pearls, the image of wounded innocence. "I want to address these hurtful and completely false rumors. Last evening at a private family event, there was a brief misunderstanding with a gentleman I did not recognize. Perhaps I was more cautious than necessary. That is all that happened." A reporter raised her hand. "Did you throw wine on Mr. Taylor?" Victoria's smile never wavered. "That accusation is absurd. If something so dramatic had occurred, surely there would be video footage. I notice none has appeared, perhaps because it does not exist. Mr. Taylor claims the security cameras malfunctioned." How terribly convenient. Victoria's smile sharpened. When someone makes serious allegations without a shred of evidence, we must ask ourselves, are we hearing the truth? Or are we witnessing an attempt to destroy a family's reputation for personal gain? Social media exploded into warring camps. One side defended Victoria. No video equals no proof. Why are we automatically believing a rich man who is probably trying to leverage a lawsuit? The other side supported Brandon. Of course, the video was deleted. The system always protects its own. This happens to black people every single day. Cable news pundits argued endlessly. One suggested Brandon had provoked the incident. Another insisted Victoria was obviously lying. Nobody could prove anything. At Hartwell Industries headquarters, the board of directors convened an emergency session. "Stock is down 3%, the first board member reported. Significant, but less catastrophic than projected. "The absence of video is helping us," added another. "Market analysts are characterizing this as a manageable PR situation." Preston sat at the head of the table, looking like he had aged a decade overnight. "Brandon will not return my calls." "What leverage does he have at this point?" The board chairman leaned back in his leather chair. "Without evidence, his claims are just allegations." "Gentlemen," Preston said quietly, "I was there. I witnessed what my wife did. Video or no video." "Preston," the chairman's voice cut like a blade. "Sometimes in business, we must be flexible with our relationship to the truth. This acquisition is the priority. Your wife handled the press. Let the matter rest." Preston looked around the conference table. 10 faces. 10 people who knew exactly what Victoria had done, and 10 people willing to pretend none of it happened. This is how the system works, he realized. Not through justice, through silence. But Victoria had forgotten something crucial. Video was not the only form of evidence. There were secrets kept for 10 years, letters that had never been made public, a chef who had been waiting for exactly this moment. That evening, Brandon sat in his townhouse, staring at 2 messages on his phone. The first from E.H. I have the video. I also have a recording from 2 years ago, my mother admitting everything. Meet me at Rosewood Cafe. 10 a.m. tomorrow. I will wear blue. Emma Hartwell, Victoria's daughter. The second from R. Mr. Taylor, I have been keeping records for 10 years. Not just about you, about everyone she has hurt, about Dion Mitchell. What happened to that boy was not an accident. And I have proof. Walk-in cooler. 6 a.m. Come alone. Brandon opened his laptop and searched for Dion Mitchell Whitmore Club. The same old article appeared. Teen busboy, suicide, country club incident. But this time, Brandon read more carefully. Between the lines, in what was not said as much as what was, Dion Mitchell had been publicly accused of stealing a diamond ring at a charity gala. Security had searched him in front of 200 guests, made him remove his jacket, turn out his pockets. The ring was later found with another guest, a white woman, a friend of the event organizer. The article never named the event organizer, but Brandon was beginning to understand who it must have been. Victoria Hartwell had done this before, and the last time, her victim did not survive to tell his story. Brandon looked at the photograph of his mother on the wall. I will not let another Dion Mitchell be forgotten, Mama. I promise. 6 o'clock in the morning, the walk-in cooler behind Whitmore Club's kitchen. Brandon's breath turned to fog in the frigid air. Blue fluorescent light hummed overhead, casting everything in a cold, sterile glow. Raymond Watts was already waiting, sitting on a stack of crates. He looked older than he had sounded on the phone. Tired, but his eyes were sharp and alert. You came alone. You asked me to. Raymond nodded slowly. He reached into his coat and pulled out a phone. Darnell's phone. Before we go any further, Mr. Taylor, I owe you an explanation. Brandon's voice went cold. You took it. Yes. On her orders. Yes. Raymond did not look away. Mrs. Hartwell told me to retrieve any recording devices and destroy the footage. She said if I did not, she would have me fired. 30 years of employment, Mr. Taylor, my pension, my health insurance, 2 children still in college. So you helped cover up what she did to me? No. Raymond held up the phone. I made the files look corrupted, but they are still there. Every second of footage, backed up to my personal cloud before I left the building. Brandon frowned. Why? Raymond set the phone down between them. Because I have been waiting 10 years for this moment. Waiting for the right person. Someone with enough money, enough power, enough of a platform to fight her and win. Someone whose story the world could not ignore. He reached into his coat again. This time he pulled out an old tin box, rusted at the corners. Inside, a handwritten letter on yellowed paper, and a photograph. A young black man, 19 years old at most. Bright smile, hopeful eyes, wearing a busboy's uniform. Dion Mitchell, Raymond said softly. He worked under me for 2 years. Best young man I ever trained. Hard-working, respectful. Never complained, not once. He dreamed of becoming a chef someday. Wanted to open a restaurant for his mother. Brandon looked at the photograph, at the hope in that young face. Tell me what happened. Raymond's shoulders sagged. The memory was clearly painful. Big charity gala, April 2014, 200 guests. Victoria Hartwell was the organizer. She does one every spring. Dion was assigned to work her table. He paused, gathering himself. At some point, Mrs. Hartwell took off her diamond ring, left it on the table when she went to the ladies' room. When she came back, the ring was gone. Let me guess. She accused Dion. Pointed straight at him, in front of everyone. Started screaming that she had seen him staring at the ring all night. Called him a thief. Demanded security search him immediately. Raymond's voice grew thick with old anger. They made him take off his jacket, empty his pockets, take off his shoes even, in front of 200 people. White people in tuxedos and evening gowns, watching a 19-year-old black kid get stripped and searched like a criminal. The ring? Security cameras showed a white woman at the next table picked it up by mistake. Friend of Mrs. Hartwell's. But that footage did not surface until the next day. By then, the damage was done. Raymond opened the tin box and lifted out the yellowed letter. 3 days after that gala, Dion jumped off the Wilson Bridge. He left this for his mother. He handed the letter to Brandon. Brandon read it. His hands began to shake. Mama, I am sorry. I cannot live in this world anymore. They look at me like I am a criminal even though I did nothing wrong. No matter what I do, they will always see me that way. I am tired, Mama. I am so tired. Brandon Taylor had built a $400 million empire by controlling his emotions. In 20 years, he had not allowed himself to cry in front of another person. In that freezing cooler, reading the last words of a 19-year-old boy who had lost his will to live, he wept. His mother, Brandon finally managed. Does she know about this letter? She kept it until she died. Passed last year. Cancer. She never got justice for her son. Never even got an apology. Why did you keep this, Raymond? Why not take it to the police? Raymond laughed bitterly. The police? A black busboy commits suicide after being humiliated at a rich white country club? They called it a tragedy, expressed their sympathies, and closed the file within a week. Nobody was interested in accountability. He looked Brandon directly in the eyes. I kept this letter for 10 years, Mr. Taylor, waiting for the right person. Someone with enough money that they cannot be silenced, enough power that they cannot be ignored, a platform big enough that the whole world will have to listen. You think I am that person? I know you are. Not because wine was thrown in your face, but because you did not throw it back. You stood there, stayed in control, walked out with your dignity intact. Dion could not do that. He was just a kid. He did not have your strength. He did not have anyone in his corner. Raymond pulled a USB drive from the tin box. Everything is on here. The video from 2 nights ago. Internal reports about Dion's death from 2014, emails between between Hartwell and club management discussing how to handle the situation. A list of 18 black employees fired at her direct request over the past decade. And my own detailed notes. Every incident, every name, every date. Brandon took the drive. It weighed almost nothing, but it felt heavier than anything he had ever held. There is one more thing, Raymond said. Someone else was recording that night, not your man. A young woman in the corner, brown hair, face like Mrs. Hartwell's. Who? Her daughter, Emma Hartwell. And from what I understand, she sent her video out before I could intercept it. She is not on her mother's side, Mr. Taylor. I think she has been waiting for this moment as long as I have. Victoria's counterattack came the very next morning. The news anchor's tone was grave. Developing story in the Whitmore Club scandal. Sources close to the Hartwell family have revealed that Brandon Taylor has a documented history of violence. In 2004, he was terminated from Goldman Sachs after physically assaulting a coworker. Brandon watched the broadcast from his living room. His stomach dropped through the floor. An old personnel file appeared on screen. Terminated. Conduct violation. Sandra and Darnell arrived within the hour. Is it true? Sandra asked quietly. Brandon did not look at her. Yes. You hit someone at Goldman Sachs? One punch, 20 years ago. The room fell silent. Finally, Darnell spoke. What happened? Brandon sank into a chair. The memory he had buried for 2 decades came flooding back, vivid and painful. I was 28, just promoted to associate. Big meeting with our largest institutional client. 6 people from their side, 4 from ours. Derek Whitfield sat next to me. Same position, same ambitions, but very different views about who deserved to be in that room. His jaw tightened. In the middle of my presentation, Derek interrupted. He said, "I do not understand why we have a—" Brandon stopped. He used the word Sandra, the worst word, in front of 6 clients, in front of my colleagues, like I was not even human. Sandra drew a sharp breath. I lost control. 1 punch, broke his nose. Security dragged me out within minutes. And Goldman fired you for it? They fired us both, but the paperwork was very different. My file said conduct violation. His said resigned for personal reasons. He received a severance package and a recommendation letter. I got blacklisted from Wall Street for 2 years. The injustice of it hung heavy in the air. What about the clients in the room? Darnell asked. They must have heard what he called you. 6 clients, all white. All testified to HR that I attacked Derek without any provocation whatsoever. None of them mentioned what he said to me, not one. Sandra was already searching on her phone. Derek Whitfield. He died in 2019. Single car accident. Brandon nodded. I know. The only person who could confirm what really happened is dead. He stood and walked to the window. His voice grew thick with emotion. 20 years. I built everything I have to prove them wrong. 20 years of perfect control. Never letting them see me angry. Never giving them ammunition. And now Victoria Hartwell digs this up and uses it to paint me as the violent one. The threat. His shoulders began to shake. My mother died without ever knowing her son was fired from Goldman Sachs. I never told her. I was too ashamed. He turned to face them. His eyes were red. I have $400 million, and they can still make me look like a criminal. Dion Mitchell had nothing. He had no one. What chance did that boy ever have? Sandra's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Her eyes went wide. Brandon, there is someone who wants to meet us. Her name is Caroline Whitfield. Who? Derek Whitfield's ex-wife. She divorced him in 2005, 1 year after what happened to you. Sandra read the message aloud. She says she heard what Derek called you. She says she is ready and willing to testify. Brandon stared at her. How would she know? She says Derek told her that night. He was drunk. He was bragging about it, laughing about how he got you fired. Sandra looked up from her phone. She says she has carried the guilt of staying silent for 20 years. When she saw the news calling you violent, she knew she could not keep quiet any longer. For the first time in days, something like hope flickered in Brandon's chest. Where is she? Vermont. She is a school teacher now, lives a quiet life, but she says she will meet you tomorrow. Brandon looked at the USB drive in his hand. Raymond's evidence. Now Caroline's testimony. The truth was assembling itself piece by piece. Vermont. A small coffee shop in a quiet mountain town. Caroline Whitfield was waiting when Brandon arrived. 48 years old. Gray streaking through her brown hair. Kind eyes lined with old sorrow. Thank you for coming all this way, Mr. Taylor. Thank you for reaching out, Mrs. Whitfield. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Her fingers were trembling slightly. I should have done this 20 years ago. I was young. I was scared. I was a coward. Tell me what you remember. Everything. She closed her eyes briefly. Derek came home that night, drunk, laughing, so pleased with himself. He said, "You should have seen his face when I said it. He actually punched me. Now he is getting fired and I am getting his promotion." She opened her eyes. They were wet with tears. He used that word like it was nothing. Like you were nothing. Like destroying your career was a game he had won. "Why did you stay with him after that?" "I was afraid. His family had money, connections. I did not think anyone would believe me over a Whitfield." She wiped her tears. "I stayed one more year. I could not look at him the same way. Every time he touched me, I felt sick. Finally, I left. But I never spoke up. I never told anyone what he had done." Her voice cracked. "When I saw the news saying you were violent, calling you dangerous, using that old incident to destroy you, I knew I could not stay silent anymore. You are not a violent man, Mr. Taylor. You were a young man who was called the worst thing a black man can be called, in front of colleagues, in front of clients, and you reacted the way any human being would react." Brandon reached across the table. "Your testimony could change everything." "I know. That is why I am here. I am ready." Later that same day, Brandon met Emma Hartwell at Rosewood Cafe in Georgetown. She looked startlingly like her mother. The same brown hair, the same blue eyes. But where Victoria's face showed contempt, Emma's showed sorrow. Where Victoria radiated entitlement, Emma seemed to carry a quiet burden. "Thank you for meeting me, Mr. Taylor. You said you have something important to share." Emma pulled out her phone. "2 years ago, I recorded a conversation between my parents. It is the reason I have not been home since." She pressed play. Victoria's voice, crystal clear. "Preston, I do not care who Brandon Taylor is. I will not allow a black man to sit at the same table as my family. If you proceed with this deal, I will make certain it fails. I have my methods." Preston's voice, weak and defeated. "Victoria, this is $2.4 billion. This is our company's survival." Victoria, "Our company's future is our family's future, and our family does not associate with people like that. My ancestors would be spinning in their graves." Emma stopped the recording. "I was 20 years old when I heard this. I was in the next room studying. That was the day my mother stopped being my mother." "Why did you keep it?" "Because I knew that someday she would do something in public, something the whole world would see. And when that day came, I would have proof that it was not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. This is who she is. This is who she has always been." Brandon studied the young woman's face. "You understand that releasing this will destroy your mother." Emma's expression hardened. "My mother destroyed herself a long time ago. I am just making sure she does not destroy anyone else." She leaned forward. "Do you know what I study at Yale, Mr. Taylor? Civil rights law? Do you know what I do with my trust fund money? I donate to the NAACP, the Equal Justice Initiative, all secretly because if my mother ever found out, she would cut me off completely." "You could lose everything by doing this." "I lost my family the day I heard that recording. What else is there to lose?" She took a deep breath. "I am not doing this for you, Mr. Taylor. I am doing it for Dion Mitchell. I was 14 when he died. I did not understand what happened then, but I understand now." That evening, at Meridian Capital headquarters, the team assembled everything they had gathered. Sandra presented the evidence systematically. From Chef Raymond Watts, the complete video from the incident, internal reports about Dion Mitchell from 2014, emails showing Victoria directed the cover-up, employment records of 18 black staff members terminated at her request, 10 years of detailed documentation. She clicked to the next slide. From Emma Hartwell, the audio recording from 2 years ago. Her own video from the incident showing a different angle with clearer audio, including the moment Victoria said, "Since when do we let black people in through the front door?" Next slide. From Caroline Whitfield, a sworn affidavit that Derek Whitfield admitted using the N-word. She is prepared to testify in court. Final slide. From other victims, Dr. Harold Patterson, Cassandra Williams, and Anthony Jefferson, all willing to speak publicly about their experiences. Plus, Maya Richardson, the server who witnessed the wine incident firsthand. Brandon surveyed the assembled evidence, mountains of documentation, multiple witnesses, video from multiple angles. When does Jasmine Davis publish? Sandra smiled. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., front page of the Washington Tribune. 6 in the morning. The Washington Tribune published Jasmine Davis's investigation. The Whitmore Files, a decade of discrimination and one boy's death. 18,000 words. Interactive timeline. Every piece of evidence documented and linked. The video of Victoria throwing wine. Emma's damning recording. The full story of Dion Mitchell. By 7, the Tribune's servers had crashed 3 times from overwhelming traffic. By 8, hashtags were trending worldwide. Justice for Dion. Whitmore Files. Say his name. By noon, 52 other country clubs across America had members coming forward with their own stories of discrimination. The public response was overwhelming. Twitter exploded. She called black people, people like that. I am crying and furious at the same time. 132,000 retweets in the first hour. TikTok videos showed people watching the Dion footage, weeping. He was 19 years old, 19, and the system killed him. Dion Mitchell's photograph was shared millions of times with the hashtag #SayHisName. Outside Whitmore Club, protesters gathered by the thousands, signs waved in the air. Justice for Dion. Justice for Brandon. We see you, Victoria. Racism has consequences. Dion Mitchell's family came from Baltimore. His aunt, 68 years old, took the microphone in front of the assembled crowd. My nephew Dion dreamed of becoming a chef. He wanted to open a restaurant and name it after his mama. He never got that chance, because a rich woman decided he was a thief based on nothing but the color of his skin. She held up his photograph. The same bright smile, the same hopeful eyes. For 10 years, nobody remembered my nephew. Today, the whole world knows his name. Dion Mitchell. Say his name. The crowd roared back. Dion Mitchell. Dion Mitchell. Dion Mitchell. But at 5 o'clock that afternoon, the Prescott family made their countermove. A hastily arranged press conference. Victoria's lawyers at the podium. Victoria herself conspicuously absent. We want to provide important context for Victoria Hartwell's behavior. Victoria grew up in an extremely difficult family environment. Her father, Theodore Prescott, held extreme and repugnant views regarding race. He was a cruel and abusive man. The lawyer paused for dramatic effect. Victoria was psychologically traumatized as a child. If she ever showed any kindness or warmth toward people of color, her father punished her severely. We have psychiatric records from when she was just 16 years old. A document appeared on the screens behind him. Patient exhibits extreme anxiety related to paternal expectations regarding racial attitudes. Victoria Hartwell is not a monster. She is a victim of generational trauma, of an abusive childhood. We ask the public to consider this context before rushing to judgment. Social media fractured immediately. Some voices softened. She was abused, too. Maybe we should have some compassion. Others remained firm. Trauma is not a license for racism. She is 44 years old. She has had decades to change. At Meridian Capital, Sandra watched the shifting coverage with growing alarm. They are repositioning her as the victim, and it is working. The narrative is changing. Darnell paced the room. What do we do now? Brandon stood at the window, watching the city lights below, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. Press conference. Tomorrow morning. I will address this myself. What are you going to say? Brandon turned to face them. The truth. All of it, including my own past. He paused. And then I am going to say what Victoria Hartwell can never bring herself to say. The next morning. A packed conference hall in Washington, D.C. Hundreds of reporters filled every seat. Cameras from every major network. Live stream viewers numbering in the millions worldwide. Brandon Taylor walked to the podium alone. No notes, no teleprompter, no prepared remarks. In the front row sat Emma Hartwell, having publicly broken with her mother. Beside her, Dion Mitchell's aunt, clutching her nephew's photograph. Both had tears in their eyes before Brandon spoke a single word. Thank you all for coming. I am not going to read a prepared statement. I am going to talk to you directly. One human being to another. He took a steadying breath. First, let me address the year 2004. Goldman Sachs. Derek Whitfield. You have heard that I punched a colleague and was subsequently terminated. That is true. Murmurs rippled through the assembled reporters. What you have not heard is why. Derek Whitfield, in the middle of a client presentation in front of 6 people, called me the N-word, and I lost control. One punch. Dead silence. I have been ashamed of that moment for 20 years. Not because I struck a man who dehumanized me, but because I lost control. My mother taught me that controlling my anger was my greatest strength. That day, I failed her. He looked directly into the cameras. But I want every young black man and woman watching this to hear me clearly. Do not be ashamed of your anger. Your anger is valid. Be thoughtful about how you choose to express it. I made the wrong choice in 2004. But at Whitmore Club, I made the right one. I stood there. I did not fight back. I walked out with my dignity intact. That is the lesson I hope you take from my story. He let those words settle over the room. Now, regarding Victoria Hartwell. The tension in the room became palpable. Yesterday, her family revealed that she grew up with an abusive, racist father, that she was psychologically damaged in childhood, that she is a victim of generational trauma. Brandon nodded slowly. I believe them. I genuinely believe Victoria Hartwell was traumatized. I believe her father was a cruel and terrible man, and I sincerely feel compassion for the little girl who suffered through that. Surprised murmurs spread through the crowd. But, his voice hardened. That little girl grew up. Victoria Hartwell is 44 years old. She has money, power, unlimited access to resources, therapy, education, travel, the opportunity to meet different kinds of people, to learn, to grow, to change. She had 44 years to make a different choice. He turned slightly toward Dion's aunt. My mother, Dorothy Taylor, grew up in crushing poverty. She was taught from birth that white people were her superiors. She was taught to bow her head, never to look them in the eye, never to speak unless spoken to. She had her own generational trauma. His voice cracked with emotion. But my mother chose to teach me differently. She said, Brandon, do not ever hate anyone because of their skin color. Hate bad actions, not people. My mother had no money, no power, no therapists, no resources. All she had was the choice to break the cycle, and she made that choice every single day. He turned back to face the cameras. Victoria Hartwell had the same choice, and for 44 years she chose to continue the cycle, chose to view people who look like me as less than human, chose to humiliate Dion Mitchell in front of 200 people for a crime he did not commit. His voice dropped lower, heavy with grief. Dion Mitchell was 19 years old. He did not have 44 years to process or understand why Victoria treated him that way. He did not have the luxury of context about her childhood trauma. All he knew was that a powerful woman called him a thief in front of everyone he worked with, and that nobody defended him. Nobody stood up for him. Nobody said, "This is wrong." Brandon's eyes glistened. 3 days later, Dion wrote a letter to his mother. "I cannot live in this world anymore. They always see me as a criminal." Then he jumped off a bridge. He wiped his eyes. Dion Mitchell never got the luxury of explaining his pain. Nobody asked about his trauma. Nobody cared. He straightened, composing himself. "So please do not ask me to feel sorry for Victoria Hartwell because of her difficult childhood. Ask me why nobody felt sorry for Dion Mitchell. Ask me why his childhood was cut short at 19. He paused, then continued with renewed strength. "One final announcement. The Hartwell Industries acquisition will proceed." Shocked murmurs erupted. "With new conditions. Preston Hartwell will resign as CEO, and 5% of annual profits will be permanently directed to the Dion Mitchell Foundation. Scholarships for black children who dream of becoming chefs." He looked at Dion's aunt. She was sobbing openly. 12,000 workers at Hartwell Industries did not throw wine in my face. They should not lose their livelihoods because of one woman's cruelty. But Victoria Hartwell must face consequences. And her consequence is this. Every year, hundreds of young black people will learn to cook, to create, to follow their dreams. Because of money from her family's company. That is justice, not revenge. Transformation. 6 months later, a community center in Baltimore. The neighborhood where Dion Mitchell grew up. Victoria Hartwell stood alone before a room filled with black faces. No cameras, no lawyers, no PR team. Just her. Her voice trembled. "I am sorry." 2 words. The hardest words she had ever spoken. "Not sorry because I got caught. Sorry because I was wrong. I am sorry to Dion Mitchell, the boy whose life I destroyed. I am sorry to his family, the people I robbed of their child. I am sorry to Mr. Taylor, the man I humiliated." Tears streamed down her face. "I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I only want you to know I will spend the rest of my life trying to be different. Not because a court ordered me to, because it is the right thing to do." The aftermath unfolded over the following months. Victoria Hartwell received 200 hours of community service and 5 years of probation. Whitmore Club settled a class action lawsuit with 23 plaintiffs for $8.7 million. Theodore Prescott, Victoria's father, faced investigation for decades of discriminatory business practices. Preston Hartwell resigned as CEO. Brandon Taylor was named to Time's list of the 100 most influential people. Chef Raymond Watts opened his own restaurant, Dion's Kitchen, free culinary training for young black people. Maya Richardson received a scholarship from the Dion Mitchell Foundation. She was now in her 2nd year at Le Cordon Bleu. Emma Hartwell graduated from Yale Law School and joined the Equal Justice Initiative. Jasmine Davis won the Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism. The Dion Mitchell Foundation awarded 850 scholarships in its first year. On a quiet evening, Brandon Taylor visited a cemetery in Baltimore. 2 headstones stood side by side. His mother's, Dorothy Taylor, 1949-2008. She taught her son that dignity is claimed, not given. And beside it, a new memorial stone he had paid for. Dion Mitchell, 1995-2014. He dreamed of becoming a chef. His dream lives on. Brandon placed flowers on both graves. "I kept my promise, Mama. I stayed in control. I fought the right way." He looked at Dion's memorial. "And Dion, I'm sorry we came too late for you, but your name will never be forgotten again. I promise." He stood there until the sun went down. 2 graves, 2 people who never met in life, their stories now connected forever. If this story moved you, subscribe. Part 2 about the Heritage Circle drops next month. Comment with a broken heart emoji if you will remember Dion Mitchell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time.